Emma Carter did not plan to come home early that Thursday. Her meeting had ended sooner than expected, and she thought surprising her husband might be a small, happy moment. The sky was gray, the kind of afternoon that made the house feel warm and familiar. She parked in the driveway and noticed Mark's car. That was strange. He was supposed to be out of town for work. For a second, she smiled, thinking maybe he had come back just to see her. Inside, the house felt too quiet. Set her keys down and listened. No television, no music. Just a soft hum from upstairs. She called Mark's name once, lightly, like she didn't want to interrupt anything important. There was no answer. She took off her coat and moved forward, her steps slow, her thoughts racing ahead of her. As she walked toward the stairs, she noticed details she normally would not. A jacket draped over a chair that was not Mark's, shoes by the door that looked unfamiliar. Her chest tightened, but she told herself not to jump to conclusions. There had to be a simple explanation. Upstairs, the hallway felt longer than usual. The bedroom door was not fully closed. A narrow line of light cut across the carpet. Emma stopped. She could hear voices now, low and close. One was Mark's. The other belonged to a woman. Emma stood there, frozen, her heart pounding so loudly she wondered if they could hear it. She thought about turning back, about leaving the house, and pretending she had never come home early. But her feet moved on their own. She pushed the door open. Inside, the room looked normal at first. The bed was neatly made. The window was open slightly, letting in cold air. Mark stood near the dresser. Across from him was Lily, a woman Emma recognized from company dinners and work stories. They were not touching. They were not doing anything obvious. But they were standing too close. Close enough that Emma felt something break inside her. Air felt thick, like it was holding a secret. Mark turned around. His face changed in an instant. Surprise? Fear? Guilt? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Lily stepped back quickly, her eyes wide, her hands lifting as if she wanted to explain herself. Emma did not shout, she did not cry. She simply looked at them, taking in the truth she had somehow avoided for months. It wasn't about what she saw, it was about what she felt. The tension, the intimacy that didn't belong to her anymore. "I didn't know you were home," Mark finally said. His voice sounded small. Emma nodded slowly. She felt calm in a way that scared her. "I can see that," she replied. Lily started speaking, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that nothing had happened, that it was complicated. Emma raised her hand gently, not angry, just tired. "I don't need explanations right now," Emma said. Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "This tells me enough." She turned and walked out of the room. Each step felt unreal, like she was watching someone else move through her life. Behind her, Mark called her name again and again, but she did not stop. Downstairs, Emma grabbed her bag and keys. Her thoughts moved fast, jumping from memory to memory. Late nights alone. Mark distracted at dinner. His phone always face down. Conversations that felt shorter, colder. She had felt something was wrong, but had chosen comfort over truth. At the door, she paused. For a brief moment, she hoped Mark would say something honest, something real. Instead, he stood at the bottom of the stairs, silent, his face filled with regret. Emma opened the door and stepped outside. The cold air hit her face, sharp and grounding. She breathed in deeply, as if she had been holding her breath for a long time. She got into her car and sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Her heart hurt, but her mind was clear. She knew this moment would divide her life into before and after. As she drove away, memories filled her thoughts. The first time she met Mark in college, their small wedding by the lake. It's the way he used to look at her like she was the only person in the room. She wondered when that look had faded and how she had missed it. Tears finally came, quiet and heavy. She didn't wipe them away. She let them fall, each one carrying a piece of the life she thought she had. Emma did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not go back yet, not until she understood what she had just walked in on, not until she figured out who she was now. Behind her, the house stood still, holding its secrets. Ahead of her, a new truth waited, one that would force Emma to choose between the life she knew and the life she deserved. Emma stayed at her sister's apartment in Vancouver for 3 days, feeling like the world had tilted and left her unsteady. The city lights outside her window blurred as she tried to make sense of everything she had seen. Every time her phone buzzed with a message from Mark, her stomach dropped. He was apologetic, pleading, claiming nothing had happened, that it was complicated, that he was lonely. She read each message, the words almost mechanical, and then set the phone aside. She didn't want explanations. She wanted to understand why her life felt suddenly unfamiliar, why someone she loved could be so close to betrayal without her knowing. Sleep was impossible. Nights were the worst, when the apartment felt quiet except for her thoughts. So she replayed the scene in the bedroom over and over, analyzing every detail, every expression. Mark's surprise, Lily's sudden step back, the silence that followed her realization. Emma had imagined anger, confrontation, maybe shouting, but instead it had been quiet, awkward, almost normal. That quietness made it worse. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. It was subtle, intimate, and haunting. She wondered how long the tension had been building, how much had gone unnoticed. By the 3rd day, Emma forced herself to go outside. She walked along the waterfront, watching boats drift under the cloudy sky. She felt like a stranger in her own life, someone observing from the outside. Every couple she saw walking together made her chest tighten. She wanted love, reassurance, the kind that didn't come with questions or lies. And yet she couldn't stop thinking about Mark, about what he had said, about the years they had shared. She loved him. That much was clear, even through the fog of hurt and doubt. Finally, she agreed to meet him at a small cafe by the water. She didn't know why, part curiosity, part need for closure, part hope that maybe he could explain the unexplainable. When she arrived, Mark was already there, looking older than she remembered. His usual confident demeanor replaced with a raw, vulnerable expression. He stood as she approached, hesitant, almost fearful. There was a tremor in his voice when he said her name. "I'm glad you came," he said, but it sounded like an apology already. Emma sat down, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking yet. She looked at him closely, noticing the lines in his face, the fatigue in his eyes. This wasn't just about Lily. It was about him, about them, about choices he had made that led to this moment. "I don't know how to start," he admitted. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't realize how far I was going." Emma stayed quiet, letting him speak. He told her about feeling lonely despite the life they had, about doubts, and regrets he hadn't shared, about the emotional connection he had allowed with Lily to grow. He said he still loved her, that he wanted to fix it, to rebuild what had been broken. When he finished, Emma's mind raced. She thought of every late night alone, every time he seemed distracted at dinner, every subtle sign she had ignored. She thought about her own role, the way she had sacrificed her needs to keep the household running smoothly, to avoid conflict. And now, all of that came crashing into one point. The truth had been there all along, and she had ignored it. She asked him one simple question, though it carried the weight of months of pain. "Why didn't you talk to me?" Mark didn't have an answer. He looked down, ashamed, unable to meet her gaze. That silence hit Emma harder than any words could. She realized then that the damage wasn't just in the closeness with another woman. It was in the absence of honesty, in the years of small silences that had grown into a chasm. After the cafe, Emma walked alone along the pier, letting the cold wind whip against her face. The air felt sharp, like it was cutting through the fog in her mind. She thought about forgiveness, about second chances, about love. Could it survive? The cracks that had formed. Could they rebuild trust from this point? She didn't know. and she wasn't ready to make that decision yet. The drive back to her sister's apartment was quiet. The city lights blurred as she focused on the road. But inside, her thoughts were racing. She remembered moments from their life together, their first apartment, the tiny kitchen where they had argued over burnt toast, the small victories and shared laughter that had built the life they had. She realized that love had not disappeared. It had been tested. And perhaps it was still there, fragile but alive. That night, Emma stayed awake again, thinking. She imagined walking back into the house and confronting Mark fully. She imagined leaving him, starting over, reclaiming herself. She imagined forgiving him and choosing to stay. Each possibility felt heavy with emotion, but each felt real. She realized that her next move would define not just her marriage, but herself. By the fourth day, Emma felt a strange clarity. She agreed to meet Mark again, not at the house, but somewhere neutral, somewhere calm. She wanted to see the man she loved, not the man who had disappointed her. She wanted to hear the truth from his mouth, to measure the sincerity in his eyes. And perhaps she wanted to see if she still believed in the life they had built together. When they met, the conversation was raw, unfiltered. Mark admitted emotional mistakes, his loneliness, his confusion. He confessed that he had allowed an inappropriate closeness with Lily to grow without considering the consequences. He expressed regret and pleaded for a chance to make things right. Emma listened, her emotions swinging between hurt, sadness, and a small flicker of hope. She realized that this was not about revenge or confrontation. It was about understanding, about facing reality, about deciding whether love could survive honesty after betrayal. She saw that Mark was vulnerable, human, capable of mistakes, and capable of love. And she saw herself standing at the edge of a choice that could change everything. That evening, Emma walked back to her sister's apartment with a new sense of purpose. She didn't have answers yet. She didn't know what she would do next. But she knew one thing. She needed time, space, and clarity before she made any decision about her marriage. The events of the past few days had changed her. They had opened her eyes to truths she could no longer ignore. And for the first time, in a long time, she felt in control of her life, even amidst heartbreak. She understood that healing would not be quick. Trust would not return overnight. But for the first time, she felt she could face the future, whatever it held, with honesty and courage. And that, more than anything, was the start of a new chapter for Emma, for Mark, and for the life they still had a chance to rebuild, if they chose wisely. The story of what happened in those days was far from over. Emma's decision, her next steps, would determine the course of her life. And though the path was uncertain, she felt ready to walk it, guided by her heart and the truth she could no longer ignore.